We've come to the end of Book 7, Canto 3, the entry into the inner countries. And we have seen how Savitri was commanded to look in her material body to find her soul. And she went out in her subtle body and she looked, and there she could divine the presence of the secret soul. And then she started this inward journey into all the subconscious parts of the body. And first of all, she encountered these physical elemental beings, and then the senses that want to have free rein, not to be restrained by the mind. And that was a very unpleasant experience, like being caught in a crowded street, people rushing along, impossible to escape from that crowd of noisy beings. But finally she was able to lift herself out of that, and there was a period of calm. And then there came this great flood of the emotional being, the life being, like a great river in flood, or even it became a kind of sea. And then she experienced herself as an island, a high island, in the midst of this raging sea. But then that too quietened down, and then she passed through a realm where life was subject to mind, where very much under control. And then the mind world, where the beings are absolutely sure that they have already found the solutions, the answers to everything. And she had to tell them, I can't stay here because I have to find my soul. And then there were people round about who mocked and said, who is this who doesn't know that the soul is just a function or a misfunction of the glands? But there were others who said, no, there is something like spirit, that's what she's looking for. And there was one who wondered, is it possible? Is there really a way to find the soul? And then she came into a quieter space and rode the world's winding highway. And there again there were a lot of people, but these were very different people. These are luminous beings hurrying from the soul world out to help all of us here. And for a moment she felt like going with them to help. But then she remembered, I can't do that until I have found my soul. That's what I've been told to do. That's what I must do. Only when I've found my soul, I will really be able to help. So then she asks them, you must know, you are coming from that place. Tell me, where can I find my soul? And one of them pointed her the way, and he told her, follow the world's winding highway to its source. Where does that road start? There, in the silence few have ever reached, thou shalt see the fire burning on the bare stone and the deep cavern of thy secret soul. That's where we stopped last time. I think this image of the fire burning on the bare rock, this is very, very suggestive. Of course, we have this at Tiruvannamalai when they light the fire on the bare rock, but I suppose there they have to build the fire This is a fire that's burning on the bare rock. There's no fuel for it. It's only its own fuel. This is the Agni in matter. So I'm going to read just the last 2 sentences of Canto 3, and then I'll go on to Canto 4. Then Savitri, following the great winding road, came where it dwindled into a narrow path, trod only by rare, wounded pilgrim feet. A few bright forms emerged from unknown depths and looked at her with calm, immortal eyes. There was no sound to break the brooding hush. One felt the silent nearness of the soul. But before Savitri actually comes into the presence of her own soul, we have another canto in between. It's called The Triple Soul Forces. Very, very interesting canto. Before she meets the soul itself, she meets one after the other these 3 powers of the soul, soul forces. And they are embodied as wonderful goddess figures. Here, from a low and prone and listless ground, the passion of the first ascent began. A moon-bright face in a somber cloud of hair, a woman sat in a pale, lustrous robe. A rugged and ragged soil was her bare seat. Beneath her feet, a sharp and wounding stone. A divine pity on the peaks of the world. A spirit touched by the grief of all that lives. She looked out far and saw from inner mind this questionable world of outward things, of false appearances and plausible shapes. This dubious cosmos stretched in the ignorant void. The pangs of earth, the toil and speed of the stars, and the difficult birth and dolorous end of life. Accepting the universe as her body of woe, the mother of the 7 sorrows bore the 7 stabs that pierced her bleeding heart. The beauty of sadness lingered on her face. Her eyes were dim with the ancient stain of tears. Her heart was riven with the world's agony and burdened with the sorrow and struggle in time. An anguished music trailed in her rapt voice. Absorbed in a deep compassion's ecstasy, lifting the mild ray of her patient gaze in soft, sweet, training words, slowly she spoke. O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. To share the suffering of the world I came. I draw my children's pangs into my breast. I am the nurse of the dollar beneath the stars. I am the soul of all who, wailing, writhe under the ruthless harrow of the gods. I am woman, nurse and slave and beaten beast. I tend the hands that gave me cruel blows, the hearts that spurned my love and zeal I serve. I am the courted queen, the pampered doll. I am the giver of the bowl of rice. I am the worshipped angel of the house. I am in all that suffers and that cries. Mine is the prayer that climbs in vain from earth. I am traversed by my creature's agonies. I am the spirit in a world of pain. We're going this way? Yes, Dhanalakshmi. So we go back to the bottom of page 501 and we'll look sentence by sentence.
Then Savitri, following the brief winding road, where it dwindled into a narrow path, trod only by rare wounded pilgrim feet. A few bright forms emerged from unknown depths and looked at her with calm, immortal eyes. There was no sound to break the brooding hush. One felt the silent nearness of the soul.
Yes. So that's what the beings had told her. You follow this winding road of the world, find its source. Where does it begin? So she follows this great winding road. And she came to where it dwindled. It became smaller and smaller and smaller until it's only a little narrow path. And there are not many people on that path. That path is trodden only by rare, wounded pilgrim feet. Only a few pilgrims pass that way, and they pass barefoot on that rough path, so their feet are wounded and painful. As she moves along that path, She sees a few bright forms emerging, just appearing from unknown depths. She doesn't know where they come from, but they look at her with calm, immortal eyes. And it becomes very, very quiet. There was no sound to break the brooding hush. It's not only silent, one has the feeling that this silence contains something. Something will come out. It's a brooding hush. One felt the silent nearness of the soul. She feels that she's coming very near to the source. I keep forgetting your name, dear. What's your name? Vijaya, sorry, yes.
Here come a large, the low and the gold and listless cloud. The passion of the first patient began. A moon bright face in a sample cloud of hair. A woman's sat in a pale lustrous coat.
Let's pause there. So Savitri finds herself on a low ground, flat, it's prone, and nothing much seems to grow there. He says listless. If somebody is listless, they are tired, they don't have much energy. But from there, the first ascent begins, as if there's a mountainside going up. But there, where the ascent begins, she sees a woman sitting in a pale, shining robe, lustrous. It's gleaming, shining gently. And this woman has a face that is shining like the moon, a moon-bright face, surrounded by a cloud of dark hair, a somber cloud of hair. Suresh? Rugged.
Rugged and rugged soil was her bare seat. Beneath her feet a sharp and winding stone.
Wounding
stone.
Yes, let's look at those words. Rugged, it means it's rough. The soil is very rough and ragged. You know, ragged, your clothes, if you wear them too long, they get ragged. So there's something rough about that soil where she's sitting. She's sitting on the bare ground. And beneath her feet she has a stone, but it's not a comfortable, round, smooth stone. It's a sharp stone with pointed edges that will wound the feet. This is something symbolic. Bärbel.
A divine pity on the peaks of the world, a spirit touched by the relief of all that lives. She looked out far, and so from inner mind, this questionable world of outward things, of false appearances and plausible shapes. This dark,
Dubious.
dubious cosmos stretched in the ignorant world. Pangs of earth, the toil and speed of the stars, and the difficult birth and dolorous end of life.
Yes. So this figure, this symbolic figure, this woman, she embodies pity, divine pity. And she's there on a high level, on the peaks of the world. We read about spirits who live on high levels who are not touched by our grief at all, no? And our prayers don't reach them. But she is a spirit who is touched by the grief, the suffering and sorrow of everything that lives. Wherever there is life in our material world, there is suffering. She's touched by all that suffering. And she can see from where she is on this high peak, she can see very far. She looked out far. And where is she looking out from? She's looking out from inner mind. So this is where her seat is. She's in a level of inner mind that's very, very close to the soul. But she's projected out into inner mind. And she's just one of the powers of the soul. She's a power of pity, of compassion. And from her seat there, she looks out and she sees this world, this questionable world of outward things, where nothing is clear and certain. It's all mysterious. Of course, there are many things we take for granted, but that's only because we are not asking the questions that could be asked. This is a world of false appearances. The appearances that we see are hiding the truth. They are not revealing it. And the shapes that we see, they are plausible. We believe in them. But somebody who is plausible, it's just that he's a good trickster. He can trick you into believing things. This whole cosmos, this whole universe is dubious, is doubtful, stretched out in the ignorant void, the great emptiness of space where there is no knowledge. She sees all that and she feels the pangs, the pain of the earth. We don't realize, we live in our minds and we don't realize how much the earth is suffering. But she feels the pangs of earth. And she sees the speed of the stars, but also all the toil, all the energy that goes into that cosmic movement. And she sees the world of life, how life begins, how difficult it is for life to emerge from matter, and how difficult it is for living things to be born out of material bodies, physical bodies. No? And then they live for some time, and then there's a painful, sorry, sad end. So she sees all this, all the suffering of the universe. Bhavana.
Accepting the universe as a body of hope, the mother of the seven sorrows, bore the seven strands that pierced her bleeding heart. The beauty of sadness lingered on her face. Her eyes were dim with the ancient stain of tears.
So, this is the mother of the seven sorrows. And she's accepted that this whole material universe will be her body. And it's a body of woe. That's woe is the opposite of joy. It is sorrow, suffering.
Body of woe.
Woe. Yeah, woe is the opposite of joy, sorrow, suffering. In Christian iconography, we see sometimes this image of the heart which is pierced by 7 swords. So perhaps these are the 7 major levels of universal existence. On each of these levels, or on each of these principles, there's a particular kind of suffering. So there are the 7 sorrows and 7 stabs piercing her bleeding heart. It's a symbol of suffering on all the levels of universal existence. In the physical universe, of course. So again he evokes her face. It's moon bright and it's beautiful, but it's a beauty of sadness that's lingering, remaining on her face. And she's been there a long time. She has been carrying all this sorrow for a long time. So her eyes are not bright and joyful and gleaming. They are dim with the ancient stain of tears. She has been weeping these tears of compassion for a very long time. Young lady at the back, would you like to read?
Her heart was ruined with the world's agony and burdened with the sorrow and struggle in time. An anguished music trailed in a rapt voice, absorbed in a deep compassion's ecstasy, lifting the mild ray of her patient gaze.
Next line, yeah?
In soft, sweet, trailing words, slowly she spoke.
Yeah, thank you. We'll pause there. Riven, it means split. We talk about hearts being broken. This heart is really split with all the suffering of the world. And it's bearing this heavy burden, this load of all the sorrow and the struggle in time. So when she speaks, her voice is musical, but it's a music of sorrow, of anguish, an anguished music trailed in her rapt voice. Sometimes musicians can, in a very beautiful way, express sadness, anguish, pain. She's absorbed, she's in a state of almost trance, in an ecstasy of compassion, a deep compassion. That's what she's concentrated on all the time. This is what she's carrying. This suffering is not her suffering, it's the suffering of the whole universe. And she's carrying all that. That is her task. So she speaks to Savitri in soft, sweet, training words. There's that kind of sound of music, slow, sad music in her voice.
Why is it said as compassion's ecstasy? Ecstasy is the opposite of
So she is a divine being, she's a goddess. So this intense state of compassion that she's in, it's like being in a state of ecstasy, of rapture, of trance. She's only able to support all that sorrow because there's some kind of delight which is supporting it. It says that her voice was rapt. You know this word rapt, we've spoken about it several times. It goes with rapture, you know, when you're seized by some intense emotion or intense presence even, and carried into a kind of state of trance. So she's in that rapt, trance-like state, which is bearing all that suffering. You would read Ganga Lakshmi?
Yeah. O Savitri, the young soul,
Thy,
sacred soul.
read it the right rhythm. O Savitri,
O Savitri,
I am thy secret soul.
to share the suffering of the world I carry. I draw my children's hands into my breast. I am a nurse, the nurse of the dolor beneath the stars. I am the soul of all who wailing cry under the restless hour of the world.
Yes. So the first thing she says to Savitri is that I am your soul. And then she explains what is her mission. I've come, I'm here to share the suffering of the world. All the beings in the world are my children, and I carry their pain in my breast. And I take care of all those who are suffering. I'm caring for and supporting all those who are suffering. I am the nurse. The nurse is somebody who looks after you when you are sick and in pain, no? The dolor, suffering, the pain, all the pain that is beneath the stars. Here on this, actually the suffering comes mainly in the life plane, on mental plane also. I'm even the soul of all those beings who are suffering, who wailing. When we suffer, often we give expression to it by weeping or crying or complaining. And writhing. This is when you can't help moving, you are suffering so much pain, you twist your body, no? She says the beings are writhing like a wounded snake will writhe under the ruthless harrow of the gods. The harrow is the pointed part of the plough that drives through the earth and makes the furrow. So if there are small creatures in the way while the farmer is ploughing his field, they will get hurt, they will writhe. So in the same way, the gods, the cosmic powers, are taking care of the universe and its evolutionary progression. And to do that, they have to plow. They have to plow their furrows, they have to make new things grow. And all we living beings, we get hurt by that harrow moving forward. It is ruthless. Those gods, they don't care about all the little beings who get hurt as they plow their furrows for the future movement. So she says, I'm like the soul of all those beings who are suffering under the ruthless harrow of the gods. And then she gives a picture that's quite touching and familiar to us of the way that women suffer in particular. You would read, Mum?
I tend
Thank you. So, all these different roles that women have to play. They have to nurse, they nurse their children, they nurse the members of their family who are sick. Often they are like slaves, they just have to do what their family and their husband tell, no? And she says, I'm also like those beasts who are beaten. Of course, women also are beaten like beasts, we know that. But she's also there with the animals. And here, it's particularly this aspect of woman. I tend, I look after, I serve those hands that gave me cruel blows. This is what women have to do. No? I serve even those hearts, maybe a husband, maybe other members of the family, who spurn my love. They don't value it. They push it away. And I try to serve them with zeal, with enthusiasm, but I just get rejected. But still I go on serving them. But there's another kind of role that women play where they don't have much free movement. They just have to sit on their throne and be like a kind of queen, and people honor them, but they don't perhaps have much freedom. Or a pampered doll, just a plaything in a wealthy household, to be played with, cherished, looked after, given beautiful things, but just like a doll, not like a real full human being. One of the beautiful roles of women is being the giver of the bowl of rice, the one who feeds the family. And in some families, she's the worshipped angel of the house. But then maybe she will be worshipped in her house, but she's not allowed to go outside much. Mahalingam, would you read?
Mine is the prayer.
Would you read the line above that? I am in all.
I am all that suffered and that cried. Mine is the prayer that climbs in vain from the earth, and traversed by my creature's agonies. I am the spirit in a world of pain.
Thank you. So she's in everything that is suffering, everything that cries out in its pain. And I am identified with those prayers that climb up to the gods from earth, apparently in vain, without getting any response. I'm traversed by my creatures' agonies. These are my creatures, my children, and all their suffering passes through me. Traversed means to pass through or across. I am the spirit in a world of pain. She tells Savitri very clearly who and what she is, what is her role. Yes. So, Joel, would you read?
The scream of tortured flesh and tortured hearts, fallen back on heart and flesh unheard by heaven, has rent with helpless grief and wrath my soul.
Yeah, this is something so awful, no? When you can't help, these terrible things happen, and you can only witness. So, and she experiences them in a very direct way. We may know those things are happening, but we don't have to witness them, and we don't have to think about them all the time. But she's carrying all this, the scream of tortured flesh and tortured hearts. When there's nobody even to hear that scream, it just falls back again to the people or the beings who have screamed. No? It falls back on the heart and the flesh. Those screams are not heard by heaven, but I feel them. This suffering has torn my soul with helpless grief and wrath, anger, that these terrible things should be happening. Who is sitting behind Oma? Would you read, please?
I have seen the peasant burning in his hut. I have seen the slashed corpse of the
Slaughtered.
child. Heard woman's cry, ravished and
Stripped.
and held. Amid the veins of the hell, on bomb. I looked on, I have no power to save.
So this is another characteristic of hers. She sees, but she can't save. She says, I've seen all this with helpless grief and wrath. I've seen the way that the poor peasant gets shut up in his hut and the hut is set on fire. I've seen the child who is slashed and slaughtered, killed. I've heard the way that women get caught hold of and their clothes are stripped and they're dragged through the streets by a hostile mob of people for whatever reason. I mean, the bayings of the hellhound mob. A hound is a hunting dog. These are people who are behaving like hunting dogs from hell, and they are making this kind of sound that hunting dogs might make, baying. I've seen and suffered all that, and I had to look on. I had no power to save. Elena.
I have brought no man or strange to aid or slay. God gave me love, he gave me not his force. I have shared the toil of the yoked animal drudge, pushed by the goat, encouraged by the whip. I have shared the fair-filled life of bird and beast. Its long hunt for the day's precarious food, its covert sling and crutch and angry prowls, its pain and terror that is
Seized
by beak and claw.
Thank you. So I haven't brought any strong arm. Some gods, some spirits have strong arms to help, and sometimes they have to, in order to help, they have to slay, they have to destroy something. She says, God gave me love, but he did not give me his force. She's a force of love, of pity, of compassion, but she doesn't have the power to help. She has to look on helplessly. And she spoke of human sufferings. Now she speaks of the sufferings of the animals. I've shared the toil of the yoked animal drudge, those poor animals who have to work for human beings. We see the poor bullocks here, what heavy loads they have to carry up and down the hills, and how difficult it is for them. No? So those poor, those yoked animal drudge, there's yoked to the cart or to the plough, and they're drudges. They have to work hard all day, every day. No? They get pushed by the goad, that sharp stick for poking them, for making them go faster. No? They get encouraged by the whip that makes them work harder, faster. And then there are the wild animals. They too, Aurobindo shows his great compassion for the wild animals. We look at them and we see, oh, how pretty and how carefree, what carefree lives they have. But he says they have fear-filled lives. The birds and the animals. How difficult it is for them to find the food that they need for the day. It's precarious. They may not catch it, and if they don't catch it, then that will be the end of them. This long hunt for the day's precarious food, and how they have to secretly go. Its covert slink, it makes itself small, presses down to the ground, slides along so nobody will notice, or it will crouch, it will have to keep very still for a long time until something comes that it can catch to eat. And then it may have to wander a long way, prowling, before it will find anything to satisfy its hunger. And if you're not a top predator, then you suffer this pain and terror, because at any moment something may catch you. You may get seized by the beak and the claws of something coming from above. What fear-filled lives the animals and the beasts suffer. She is sharing all that. I think we'll stop there. We can read these lines. We can go right back to the bottom of page 501 and read all the lines together.
Then Savitri, following the great winding road, came where it dwindled into a narrow path, trod only by rare, wounded pilgrim feet. A few bright forms emerged from unknown depths and looked at her with calm, immortal eyes. There was no sound to break the brooding hush. One felt the silent nearness of the soul. Here, from a low and prone and listless ground, the passion of the first ascent began. A moon-bright face in a sombre cloud of hair. A woman sat in a pale, lustrous robe. A rugged and ragged soil was her bare seat. Beneath her feet, a sharp and wounding stone. A divine pity on the peaks of the world. A spirit touched by the grief of all that lives. She looked out far and saw from inner mind this questionable world of outward things, of false appearances and plausible shapes, this dubious cosmos stretched in the ignorant void, pangs of earth, the toil and speed of the stars, and the difficult birth and dolorous end of life. Accepting the universe as her body of woe, the mother of the 7 sorrows bore the 7 stabs that pierced her bleeding heart. The beauty of sadness lingered on her face. Her eyes were dim with the ancient stain of tears. Her heart was riven with the world's agony and burdened with the sorrow and struggle in time. An anguished music trailed in her rapt voice. Absorbed in a deep compassion's ecstasy, lifting the mild ray of her patient gaze, in soft, sweet, training words, slowly she spoke. O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. To share the suffering of the world I came. I draw my children's pangs into my breast. I am the nurse of the dolor beneath the stars. I am the soul of all who wailing writhe under the ruthless harrow of the gods. I am woman, nurse and slave and beaten beast. I tend the hands that gave me cruel blows, the hearts that spurned my love and zeal I serve. I am the courted queen, the pampered doll. I am the giver of the bowl of rice. I am the worshipped angel of the house. I am in all that suffers and that cries. Mine is the prayer that climbs in vain from earth. I am traversed by my creatures' agonies. I am the spirit in a world of pain. The scream of tortured flesh and tortured hearts, fallen back on heart and flesh, unheard by heaven, has rent with helpless grief and wrath my soul. I have seen the peasant burning in his hut. I have seen the slashed corpse of the slaughtered child, heard woman's cry ravished and stripped and hailed amid the bayings of the hellhound mob. I have looked on. I had no power to save. I have brought no arm of strength to aid or slay. God gave me love. He gave me not his force. I have shared the toil of the yoked animal drudge, pushed by the goad, encouraged by the whip. I have shared the fear-filled life of bird and beast, its long hunt for the day's precarious food, its covert slink and crouch and hungry prowl, its pain and terror seized by beak and claw.